there is some other stuff. We mentioned Bendis' Superman thing. Connor's got a few other stories here.
Yeah, we mentioned Metal there. Snyder, if you recall, around the time of the first Metal, posted like a flowchart of reading things, and he's done the same again for this, which is actually maybe announced some extra one-shots and spin-off stuff that maybe he shouldn't have done. Because obviously in the October to December we have Death Metal 4 through 6, but it also points at some specials. 2 of them are named here, and it says Last 52 and Robin King.
Do you know, actually, what I'm going to say, I don't have really anything to say about Robin King, but on Last 52, combined with the fact that one of the one-shots in September is the Multiverse's End thing, I feel like he was really sort of downplaying back when all this, the news of Death Metal was coming out, and obviously we were going to have G5 or 5G as well. And I think it was really downplaying, Death Metal's not going to be the thing that resets things, we're not doing that, the Crisis side of things. I feel like the more of these one-shots being revealed, the more I'm getting this feeling like, no, this is kind of going to either reset the timeline, but they're definitely doing something with it.
I don't think he was lying when he said that, though. I think when he said that originally, this wasn't the plan, because there was going to be the Generations one-shots that would take care of that. So I think this has been more a reaction to, okay, well, things have changed, clearly, with the situation of what's going on. So now this is what it is. I don't think he was lying, though, when he said that originally.
No, I do think this is more akin to something like 0 Hour that's playing cleanup than a proper Crisis that's restructuring.
That's a fair comparison. You know what I mean? But so, I do think there's going to be some relaunch books, though, coming out of this.
Well, on that, we get to Death Metal 7 in January, and then it says February, ? Exclamation mark. So, I mean, there's going to be stuff there that he's obviously not allowed to tease yet.
Yeah, but I do.
No, they're done. They're done with singles.
Also, on the specials, he actively said, "Okay, we've teased some here, but we have more than this prepared if necessary." He basically said, DC are waiting to see the reaction and the sales for the first few issues, seeing how much people actually want. Depending on how well it does, they have more stories planned. Obviously, if it doesn't do that well, or the situation's not allowed, then they just won't do them all.
They've probably got my money, so they can keep putting them out. I do think that, I don't know if we're going to get like a proper Rebirth-esque sort of line-wide thing come January or February, but I do feel like, there's a lot of things coming to an end over the next few months. Williamson's Flash run. I wonder if are we going to even start a proper new run? Is it going to be just a bunch of filling arcs until we get to that point? It might be, may not be. I don't know.
Could be.
It'll just fill it. It'll do what Justice League's been doing, where it did a bunch of fill-ins until it's relevant to Death Metal. We'll do a 5-issue tie-in out to that.
Yeah, and then maybe Justice League, because notably that 5-issue arc will take it not quite to the end of Death Metal, but it'll get within spitting distance.
That'll take it to the end of November, so there'll be 2 issues of Metal left.
I feel like Justice League, Flash, those other Prime books, not that they're going to necessarily renumber, because I don't want a Flash to renumber, but I feel like there's maybe arguments that they're going to, whatever the new directions are for those, are going to spin out of the end of Death Metal. Even if it's just as simple as Death Metal does sort of fix some timeline stuff, so now there's just a new status quo for it to explore. I can see that being the case. But who knows? I don't know. Sometimes we try and guess these things, and then they just...
Kind of excited for Metal now, though.
Oh, I already was. I like the first one a lot.
Me too. But I mean, I'm more excited now that it's next week.
I'm not excited that Batman Who Laughs again, because I'm over that character.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, I'm okay.
This has to be the nail in the coffin for Batman Who Laughs for a while.
I'm sure it will be.
Yeah.
You would think.
Put your toys back in the box, Snyder.
I still wonder if he's ever going to pay off the other clans that he introduced in Metal.
Maybe this is where it comes in.
I think that'd be real cool.
Maybe we'll get that during this. That's the reason. So did this get an issue 7 added as well?
It did, yeah. We spoke about that last month, I think.
Yeah. Because the first one, did the first one get a 7 added as well? Can't remember.
I don't know, because it had the skip month, and then the was it the Forge one shot? Was that the one in the middle?
Yeah, the casting, the Forge, the
they were the
Grant
start.
Morrison one.
Yeah, the one in the middle
what was the one in the middle?
It was Hawkman Lost or something like that. Was the one.
Hawkman Lost. Yeah, Batman Found.
Yeah, it was those two.
And then you had that Grant Morrison one with Detective Chimp, Wild Hunt.
Oh.
So,
Oh yeah. I don't know how many issues it actually ended up, but in terms of the things that felt actually important, more than 6 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Grant Morrison one, I think, was the least important of the bunch. I just kind of feel like, Grant Morrison's willing to do a thing.
Yeah.
We'll let him do it.
It's so fun.
Forge and Casting, and then the Hawkman one were definitely all borderline just main numbered issues.
Well, Forge and Casting were always the prelude to it, so that was never like a question. I think the Batman Found and or Hawkman Lost, those were kind of more one shots in the middle that actually are quite important to the overall thing.
And I suspect the Trinity Crisis is very much akin to those issues.
Yeah, probably. It makes sense. So what else you got?
A couple more things. We've got Tynan was talking about King's Batman Catwoman book. Basically just saying, it's kind of just outside continuity as far as he's aware now. It's kind of just shifted. It's not going to affect his stuff in any way.
Which we expected, to be honest. Given that we were doing daughter stuff and Catwoman getting pregnant and whatnot, I felt like that was just the natural conclusion to it.
Yep. We've got some sad news. Sejic is no longer going to be working for DC. He's not going to be doing any work for hire at all. He's just doing his own webcomics, Sunstone, that sort of stuff.
When you said we've got some sad news, I legitimately thought you were going to go into the story about someone dying this week.
No. Well, that's obviously much sadder. We'll get to that.
Yeah, it was just the way you phrased it. We've got some sad news. I'm like,
I thought that too, and then he said, and I was like, oh yeah, that's sad too.
Yeah.
This week sucks.
It's not equally sad as the person dying, but sure.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to be getting a Harleen sequel now, unless he's already completed it. I don't think so. It's a shame. He did actually say back in February that he did have plans to do a second Harleen story. So unless he'd already finished that,
unless he's just taking time to work on his creator-owned stuff. Who knows what that is? If it's just Sunstone or
I think he's just doing that entirely. He spoke about it a bit more on Twitter. He said this is for his health. Is had like wrist injuries and stuff, and the deadlines of work for hire stuff. It's actually getting to him too much.
Well, I mean, the two things is that one, that maybe he's still going to fulfill whatever he'd promised. So even if he's technically shifting over, maybe he'll still do the sequel. Two, I can still see him coming back at some point after like an extended time away.
It's possible. Yeah. The only reason I will discount that first point is whether or not he's finished it already, because his exact quote was, "Tomorrow I complete my last pages in the standard comics industry and then move into the glorious world of webcomics."
Well, maybe he has been working on it a lot. I mean, hell, maybe he had time because everything.
It's possible, but I don't know if he's referring to pages for an interior of these things, or maybe he just means some covers. It's hard to say.
Right. I think wasn't he an illustrator that kind of fell into comics because of his webcomic?
Yeah.
So this.
I wouldn't. I would not have assumed that covers would include in this. I feel like he would still do covers occasionally, but I don't know.
I mean,
he might.
That seems like the sort of thing that, given what he's saying, like I feel like covers aren't as stressful. But I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe that's also a harsh deadline that he doesn't want to have. But
I mean, I don't know. The way that if it is like his wrists and stuff, and he just wants to give him a break, then I could see him just working on his stuff when he wants, because even if you have a cover, there are deadlines and whatnot.
Yeah.
Unless they had a bunch of stuff, just, like pinups that you could use as covers.
In that case, I'll just hope that DC at some point, offer him enough money and give him enough like time to just take his time on whatever he wants to do, whether that's Harleen 2 or whatever, but hopefully more comes of it, because we do actually kind of love his stuff. Because that was the thing, the writing in Harleen was like, oh wait, he's also good at this too.
Yeah.
Shit. Okay. What else you got?
I've got 2 actually Marvel stories that are potentially relevant.
Marvelous.
Well, very, very one is actually, they're kind of abandoning the plans for Free Comic Book Day. So obviously it was supposed to be rescheduled officially later in the year. Marvel have kind of gone, screw it, we're releasing our issues in July. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone follows suit now and just kind of starts putting stuff out there. They're still putting them out for free.
It's interesting because, I assume they're teasing things they're going to be doing soon, so they have to actually have them out before all the books start coming out. So, and given that DC's thing that they were going to tease isn't happening anymore, they don't have to worry about it. So, yeah, it could just mean Free Comic Book Day is just kind of just not a thing this year.
It might well.
At least from the big two. I mean, maybe Image and all that will still put some stuff out, but
yeah. And just one other one I want to talk about that is funny and petty, and
okay.
I don't know if you've seen this. So Marvel have announced a new slate of variant covers that'll be coming to stores.
Oh, I think I know what this is. You big one.
There's 13 of them, and it's basically blank covers. It'll have the title on, and the issue number and all that. The standard logo stuff, and then all it'll say is new comic book day is Wednesday.
I think the actual quote is new comics every Wednesday. I think
is it every Wednesday? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't worry. It's a clear aim and a targeted hit.
Oh,
Matt, your mic's going. It's a clear targeted hit at DC, but it wasn't worded as on the nose as new comic book day is Wednesday.
Yeah, it feels very petty. And why? Who's buying this? Who cares enough to buy it?
I don't understand why they're wasting time to do something like this.
Because they're petty as shit.
I know, but it does nobody any good. You always look who benefits, and I just outside of it being petty, I don't.
Who's going to go into the store and see, what variant covers of Marvel got this week for my books? Because I get that. I sometimes I'll have a look at what variants are. I've got it now. It just says on sale Wednesday. Is what it says. Is the text on the variant covers?
Which. Again, how is this a slam? It's not like DC's not sending new comics out.
Yeah, it's on sale Wednesday, and he's like, yeah, ours were on sale yesterday. What's your point? I would get this if DC were pushing later. If DC pushed the Thursday and Marvel on sale Wednesday, they'd be like, hey, come and get ours before DC.
I don't get this. It's stupid.
Ours are a day later, aren't we? Great.
Yeah, this makes no sense to me. Who's going into the store to pick up their issue 26 of Venom and going, oh, you know what? I'm gonna grab that variant cover that says on sale Wednesday because screw you, DC. What?
This is, I don't know. I do think there is people with that mentality who will do something this silly to own quote unquote the opposition. But obviously it doesn't accomplish anything. So I mean,
I don't. Yeah.
Sadly, I do think there's an immature market for this, but
I mean,
that's what it is.
Is there enough to make it worth it? I don't know. But I have one last thing to talk about. That is an update from the big news from last week, which was the DC and Diamond relationship. And basically, they kind of had some conversations. They're extending their agreement a little bit. So for US stores, they can order graphic novels and collections for final order up till slightly later, and reorders could go all the way through to December, I think, if it's anything that they've already had an order for. But I think more notably for Diamond UK, which was obviously a big thing that we spoke about last time because there was no clear plan in place whatsoever. Diamond UK will continue shipping DC Comics right up until the end of 2020, which I'm assuming is going to be enough time for, I think, UCS are the ones looking at getting something in place.
Oh, that's good. I mean, even if we didn't know exactly what it was, the fact that they're saying we'll do it to the end of 2020 implies to me, even just on that alone, that means DC know that they have to have some sort of system in place and they need time to do it. So
yeah, they've got about 6 months or so to get something up and running for the UK and a lot of the European audience, which again is a reasonable amount of sales.
I mean, to me that just says no, we actually do want to keep selling single issues there, and it's going to take a bit more time, but we're doing something. We're not just abandoning it. So there you go.
Yeah.
So no, that's good news. As best as we can get, I suppose.
Happy for you guys.
Yes.
Yeah, my shop actually put a big post out just before this news broke. I don't think they'd gotten this information yet, but they were saying that they really like Diamond UK. They've never had any problems. Their customer service has been good to them. They've always got their deliveries on time and not missing stuff. So apparently Diamond UK are better than standard Diamond by the sounds of it.
Yeah, so I was going to say that's a shot at US Diamond.
I think they were very intentionally making that shot, and they were saying they're kind of upset to see this part ways, But their plan is that they will still ship, they will still stock all DC Comics as much as they can. They will do their best to keep the prices the same as everything else,
Well,
subject to future conditions.
I mean, given this news, it means that that's probably going to be a lot easier than maybe thought it was going to be. So
yeah, they did say though that once, obviously, this was again under the impression of this was happening a lot sooner than this, that they will be stocking basically very little for the shelves, and it will be, if you want DC Comics, you're gonna have to order them.
yeah, I mean, again, this probably changes a little bit because of this news, and I mean, maybe the price will have to go up a little bit after whatever the new system is, but it probably won't be the double the price that the fear mongering was.
Their solution is, if it's only going up a little bit, they're kind of willing to eat those costs just to have the parity across the line with the books. So they're not charging different prices for DC books than they are for Marvel, and they still want to sell them. So maybe it's worth eating a little bit extra profit.
Just raise the prices on the Marvel books to match. There you go, done.
I'm okay with that. I don't buy enough.
Marvel tax. Just call it Marvel tax. It's fine. All right. So actually, I want to mention a bit of gaming news, just because it's slightly related to DC, in that Warner Brothers wants to sell off its entire Warner Brothers Interactive gaming division and all of its studios, including Rocksteady, who made all the Batman Arkham games. And I think it's worth mentioning, just because if you do care about DC comic video games, there's a good chance that this kind of murkies the waters a little bit now, because if someone else buys all those studios, they don't own the license of any DC properties, or for that matter, Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, all these other things that these studios typically make games out of. So Warner Bros. Could license them out, but Warner Bros. Could also just license them out to somewhere else. So
it's possible that they'll be allowed to continue working on the games that they already are. The license will essentially continue for that game.
Which would probably include, I mean, Rocksteady is a bit of a mystery, but Warner Bros. Montreal are working on a DC game. We know that. Probably a Batman game, because we're hearing.
I'm shocked it hasn't been announced already. I mean,
but I wonder if the reason why they've not announced it is because they knew they were going to be selling, and there's a lot of red tape right now about.
Possible, and that also goes for the Harry Potter game that has been leaked for a while now. That's
2 years. That's 2 years ago that was leaked.
Yeah. Again, it leaked early enough that we weren't expecting an announcement imminently, but with all the new consoles coming and all the games being announced now, we were kind of expecting it around this time. But maybe again, this news has delayed that.
Yeah. So no, it's potentially pretty big, and they could end up at a really bad home, like EA or something like that, with not only microtransactions but also the risk of these studios closing in a couple of years. So it felt worth mentioning, and it kind of affects. Because now in the future, if Warner Bros. Do want to make a video game based on a DC character, they don't just have an in-house studio to do it. And now it becomes, it's essentially what Disney are having to do with Marvel, where, okay, Square Enix can make an Avengers game, Sony can make a Spider-Man game, so on. It becomes this thing that you may get good results, but it's also a lot more varied and a lot more across the board in terms of quality and all that kind of thing. So, worth mentioning. Now, we should talk about the big creator who passed away this week a little bit. I mean, it's sadly there's a story in the Joker special.
Yep, I had just read it yesterday morning.
Yeah,
and then got the news.
I hadn't read it.
Sucked.
Yeah, I hadn't read it yet, so I got to the Denny O'Neil story in the book and went, oh shit! Like, it actually kind of hit me today when I got to that name. I was like, oh, he actually wrote something for this issue.
Yep.
So he passed away this week. So obviously big loss. He did a lot of notable Batman work specifically.
So
things.
Doing some research and looking up, because I had always known he'd created Ra's al Ghul and Talia because he wanted to give Bruce a Bat villain, or a Bat villain. Of course, he's a Bat villain, but a Bond villain for Batman. And that's where they came from. And then he had done the Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Hard Traveling Heroes. Right, he made
basically
Speedy a junkie and brought social issues into comics.
Yeah, there's the whole comics have always been political, and they have, but he brought it to the forefront in a more nuanced way than just Nazis are bad, which was what a lot of it was before.
Yeah.
Right, and so
which they still are, for the record, they're still bad.
Yes, it's always.
So we made that very clear right now.
I would like to say that it doesn't need to be said, but apparently it bloody does.
Apparently it does, and just again, all my heroes punch Nazis. That's it. From Superman, Cap, Indy. That's just it. The Rocketeer.
Jack
Like,
Kirby.
come on. Jack Kirby, of course. I love it. Sorry. But Denny O'Neil. And so I started doing a little bit more digging because, of course, I had heard about his, question, which I've never read, and the aspects he brought to that. And basically everything that I do like about Batman, which is, for self-parody, a smaller list, is directly responsible to Denny O'Neil because he wanted to get him away from the Batman 66 colorful, campy version and kind of return him to his roots as a head-busting vigilante that, worked in the shadows. And that's where the 70s took it. Him and Neil Adams started doing stuff on Batman.
Yeah.
And then he ended up becoming an editor later in the 70s and ended up like working a lot with Frank Miller.
Well, yeah, I mean, we spoke about this briefly in the quarantine episodes when I was going through the Daredevil stuff, how he was the editor on that stuff. That he was the one who brought Frank Miller not into comics. He was already an artist, but he was the one who brought him into writing, and formed that relationship that obviously led to Dark Knight Returns and Year One.
Right.
Yeah, which is funny because you talk about sort of taking Batman away from that the 60s stuff. And I think when most people think in terms of the comic books, like what sort of changed Batman is that Frank Miller stuff specifically. But this person who was kind of trying to get there more gradually was actually instrumental in those Frank Miller stories as well. So he is kind of this creative driving force behind what we think of as modern Batman.
Year One doesn't exist without Denny O'Neil.
Oh, not at all. No.
Not at all.
I can't even count the amount of comics I've read from him that be it as a writer or just as an editor. Mm-hmm. There are so many things that he's edited that you maybe don't even notice.
Right. So, we've gone on and on about our favorite Bat villains, and I've really liked Two-Face. And that was something I found out last night as I'm reading about his contributions. Up until 1970, when he put Two-Face in a Batman comic, Two-Face had showed up like a grand total of 4 times. And so it was Denny O'Neil that turned him into this from Jekyll and Hyde kind of figure to that tragic, wanted to do good, ended up becoming scarred from it, and all that trauma forming Harvey Two-Face. And that's my favorite version.
Yeah, it's what we think of as Two-Face.
Two-Face is.
He's basically to Two-Face what George Romero was to zombies, where zombies technically existed before Night of the Living Dead, but what we think of as a zombie, George Romero created in 1968.
Right. Honestly, he's probably the single most influential creator on Batman, barring the actual creators. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, they say since Bill Finger and Bob Kane that it's Denny O'Neil that has shaped Batman, and also Joker. Like Joker was the Cesar Romero version. He wasn't this clown prince of crime that was dangerous until Joker's 5-Way Revenge in the 70s. This is another thing I didn't realize is when Joker became this, maniacal villain.
I think about 90% of what we consider to be Batman in the modern sense can be traced back to Denny O'Neil's stuff.
Right.
Whether that's his writing or his editing work.
Yeah, but and then like Daredevil, like Connor brought up, him editing that book and all the street level heroes that kind of gave way to Bendis. Right, and him doing that with the street level heroes through Daredevil, and Jessica Jones, I think owes a lot to Denny O'Neil, and all this, and you don't realize the man's imprint until you
go and look at this tangled web of everything he touched.
Right, and I was always familiar with the Superman versus Muhammad Ali, Neil Adams. I didn't realize Denny O'Neil wrote that.
Yeah.
So
it was similar when Len Wein died, because obviously he's often credited as the creator of Swamp Thing, but all of a sudden you realized he was editing a lot. It wasn't just the stuff he wrote. He was editing tons of DC books over a large period of time. So his fingerprints were over tons of great stuff.
It's very easy to forget just how influential editors are in the direction of what things are going. Sure, they're not the ones writing the story. So, that the writer and artist get the credit for being those storytellers and the ideas, but the editors are the ones choosing the direction that the characters go in, and that's why we often blame editorial for things going wrong.
I guess the comparison to a TV show would be the showrunner. Like the editor, in a lot of ways, is the showrunner of essentially a family of comics, as opposed to one comic.
Yeah.
Well, and he shepherded the Batman comics and throughout the 70s.
I think the closest comparison right now I can think of would be kind of like he's like Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
Sure,
That's
yeah,
Batman.
okay.
What he is to the
Yeah.
Marvel movies, kind of overlooking this shared vision, and
Putting
this
the right people.
cohesive story. That's kind of what an editor's role is in a group editor specifically in comics.
Yeah.
That's
So
what they do.
I had listened to the Star Wars podcast, and it's not about Star Wars, Pete, so you can calm down. That they had the editors from it was Heather Antos and I want to say Charles. I can't remember his name. But they were on talking because they'd made friends with the host of this show, and they were talking about what an editor actually means for those that don't know. And because all three of the hosts came from music, they're like, no, it's basically the producer of the album. That's kind of what an editor is. They share a lot of the same goals where if they do their job right, you don't notice the editors, right? Like you would notice the producer on the album. So once I heard that, then you look at Denny O'Neil, and he's like, correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys know Beatles better than I. He's kind of like the Brian Epstein, right?
What do you mean, you guys? Connor knows Beatles better than you. I don't.
I don't know.
No,
Pete.
I get it.
You're a music guy more than I am.
He was the fifth Beatle in the sense that
Right.
he's so influential and is overlooked because he drove.
I don't know who that was.
He drove
Well,
a
I
lot of
figured-
sound and the ideas,
Right.
if not the actual composition, but the raw sound, the production. Like
Right.
The Beatles is a great example
What
with
was
the use of stereo sound. They
Right.
kind
And
of
Counterpoint wasn't Counterpoint him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyways, I feel
I can't
like
even name the
Denny
fourth
O'Neil-
Beatle, never mind the fifth.
Oh my god! Yeah, how do I know this? And I don't even really like the Beatles. Like I'm one of those weird people that like their pop stuff more than their
I could do
experimental
you.
stuff.
I could do you John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and I remember Ringo Starr because his name's Ringo Starr.
Right. George Harrison.
To be fair, he's always the one that people forget out of the four.
That's why I remember him.
Ringo's such a. He also had Pete Best, right?
Yeah.
The
Plus,
original.
his name's so close to
Sue
Dingo
Sutcliffe.
that I just think of maybe a Ringo ate your baby, and it just cracks me up.
I can't believe I know more about the Beatles than Pete.
I don't know why you should be surprised. I don't really know old music
Because
that well.
I associate you as a music person, considering how much you focus in on scores and whatnot. So it's
I'm really
just-
fussy though. Like I don't listen to a lot of
And-
popular music. I'm kind of
Yeah.
all over the place with that.
I didn't even realize I liked Elton John until I got together with my wife, and I was like, oh, that's an Elton song? And that one is too? Oh man, I think I really like Elton John beyond The Lion King. Right? So that opened a lot of doors. So I'm not, that's why
hey,
I wanted to refer to you
tangentially,
guys.
also 5,000 Candles in the Wind, technically.
Yes. Which, because, it needs to be, what does he say? 5,000 times better than a candle in the wind?
Yes, there's 5,000
Okay.
5,000 times more sadder than what
Sadder,
Candle in the
that's
Wind
right.
was for. Yeah, I think this was the gist of the idea.
So, but anyways, we're I guess from Denny O'Neil, and I didn't, out of all the commentator deaths, I didn't realize it was going to hit me so hard. Then when I started looking at what he had worked on, like I had known he had shaped Batman for my taste. Like that's the Batman I like the most. There's not a lot of because Batman with Denny O'Neil. He was this kind of globe-trotting adventurer that would come home to Gotham and face those stuff. But and I like that. And you can feel a little bit of that in Grant Morrison's Batman, and to where Incorporated kind of went. But which is one of my favorite runs. So, but yeah, man, completely bummed me out. And then you see, especially right now, with all the stuff politically going on, that image that's getting shared from his Hard Traveling Heroes of the black guy asking Green Lantern, what's he ever done for the black skinned people on Earth? He goes and helps the purple skinned aliens and the yellow skinned aliens and orange, but what's he done? And it hit hard. Kept seeing that get shared all over the place. So, and it's from the 70s. Like, it's wild.